But the conversation that Trump is really having, and I think not many people have pointed to this, is that when he says we need to take Greenland because we are worried about our national security, what he's really accepting is the fact that there is such thing as climate change. That there is something that's changing that is causing all of these issues to arise.
You're listening to Radio Free Mike. Welcome to Radio Free Mike, the podcast about freedom and its discontents. My name is Michael Scott Moore, and today we're talking to Kenneth R. Rosen, a writer who's spent a lot of time above the Arctic Circle. His new book, Polar War, covers the great game politics of territory that may not be covered in floating ice or permafrost in the foreseeable future. We talk about the reasons Trump wants Greenland, the moment in 2007 when Russia claimed the North Pole by planting a flag at the bottom of the ocean, and the ways in which China may or may not be a near Arctic state. Ken, welcome.
Hey, Mike.
So your book is about the North Pole, and it starts, or at least the whole story for me starts, with something you describe really early on. When Russia planted a flag underwater in the North Pole. And I remember that incident because I actually wrote about it when I was at Spiegel. Tell us what happened.
A submersible descended at the North Pole in the Arctic Ocean to the seabed floor. The submersible was carrying a crew of Russians and some other wealthy individuals, and they decided to plant a flag, a Russian tricolor, at the seabed floor as a sort of performative stunt to say, we could reach this depth and we have capabilities in the Arctic. And that was not taken well by all the other Arctic littoral states who felt it was this caustic maneuver to stake a claim to the North Pole. Of course, the Russian president at the time, his name is Vladimir Putin, said there's nothing to worry about. It's just a stunt and no hard feelings. It'll all be okay.
Yeah.
Of course, as we've seen in the years since, it hasn't been okay, and Russia has been increasing its presence in the Arctic, and the caustic move it was.
Right, exactly. So first of all, what kind of a flag was it? It was an aluminum thing that was weighted, right, with the flag painted on it or whatever. And there were these photographs from underneath the water, and I, like I said, I wrote about it at least from my desk at Spiegel, and everybody was just baffled. Like, why would you even claim the North Pole? We didn't even know that the North Pole was important. But of course, Russia has this enormous northern coastline, and it has some reason to claim and also to want the North Pole. But why would anyone want it?
Well, it's shocking. It was shocking at the time, in part because the Arctic had been viewed and is primarily, in some circles, still viewed as a region of cooperation and scientific research, where all these nations have come together to benefit one another, whether it be through search and rescue or fisheries operations and general Coast Guard operations. Mm-hmm. So to see a nation, one of the Arctic littorals, plant a flag and say, oh, this is our area was baffling, right? But you're right in saying that, Russia has 23,000 miles of Arctic coastline, and they're the largest Arctic stakeholder with something like 60% of the landmass in the Arctic is Russian, part of the Russian Federation. And they have a lot to worry about when it comes to climate change, insofar as having 60% of their country underlain by permafrost, mm-hmm. right? And with that comes the war in Ukraine and Western nations looking at Russia and saying, well, we've blocked them out of the Arctic Council and we've locked them out of scientific cooperation and research, but we still need to figure out what's going on with the planet. Yet we've cut out this massive puzzle piece within the Arctic and have no idea what's happening there. We don't know what kind of carbon emissions are coming from the permafrost thawing. So there's a real troublesome worrying look at the Arctic now when people talk about the Arctic. And so looking back at 2007, people often experts in Arctic studies and geopolitics in the high north look at that as an inflection point, saying this is when it really all started, when Russia started to make a move to make more of its territory in the north.
Right, right. And I mean, one of the issues is that the ice is thawing. I mean, global warming is one reason that the Arctic is more interesting because, first of all, what Russia did with the flag, like you said, was not even feasible before that. Maybe technologically it was a little bit feasible, but nobody would have wanted to do that. And so the technology and also the warming of the Arctic is making it easier to traverse the Arctic and do other stuff up there. So what are the stakes that all countries involved are interested in, either protecting or winning?
One of the things that Russia is looking at is opening up what it's calling the Northern Sea Route, which would be a route from its easternmost port to, say, Rotterdam, which would cut the travel time between the Suez Canal, would cut it by like 3 or 4 days.
Oh, it's quicker than the Suez. Yeah,
for the
right.
shipping. It's just,
Yep.
yeah. And of course, it doesn't come with any of that, the security issues per se, right? I mean, you don't have the pirates, as you are well aware.
Exactly.
Pirates and the attacks that go on there. And to say nothing of the bottleneck that can occur if one ship gets stuck. I think it was like the Evergreen, 5 years ago, they got stuck and all traffic stopped.
Exactly.
So they're looking to open that up. And with the ice melting and the ice is melting and the permafrost is thawing, that's becoming more and more feasible for non-ice class vessels. So run-of-the-mill vessels can make that transit without issue. The problem is that so many of those ships are under sanction now, and the only customer that Russia really has is China. But the book,
Wait, let me ask you something. What do you mean? So many of those ships are under sanction. Which ones?
Well, anyone that would want to transit through Russia would have to pay Russian dues, and by virtue of having to do that, would be under sanction from the U.S. and Western nations, the EU,
for doing business with Russia. Yeah, got it.
Right. So no one's touching it at this point, but Russia's hoping that at some point they'll be able to ship liquid natural gas and oil through that and make it an appealing venue for transiting when the Suez Canal is, I don't know, under fire.
Right. Right. And what are the other possible passages up there? So you mentioned the Northeast Passage. That's the one over Russia. But the Northwest Passage is the sort of, undiscovered passage by explorers from centuries ago that wanted to go around Canada, basically. They thought they could get around what they didn't even realize was North America to India.
Right.
And they just never found it.
Well, there's three that experts are looking at. There's the Northern Sea Route, which would cross over the North Pole, right? So you would go directly straight through
a transpolar,
as long as the ice melts. Transpolar route that would, if there's no longer any sea ice there in the summers, which there hardly is anymore. Then there's the Northeast, and then the Northwest, like you noted. The Northwest, though, is more labyrinthian, and it's very difficult to navigate directly. It would take a lot longer. To say nothing of Canada claiming sovereignty over it, where they believe that it's part of their territory, where others, the U.S. included, says that it's actually international waters and is, freedom of navigation is allowable to all. But I did want to make the point, Mike, that there's so many books out about the Arctic and about climate change and global warming and the effects that we're having, carbon society is having on the planet. But I really wanted this book to be about sort of like the consequences of that global warming, right? So we know many of us will agree that the planet is warming, but what does that really mean for the rest of us, right? Like, okay, so I don't have to wear a jacket anymore in March, but what does that mean for my nation and national security and geopolitics writ large? And that's sort of the focus of the book, is saying the impetus for all of this is climate change, and so how are nations either benefiting from it or losing out to it.
Well, exactly. And one consequence of climate change may be
war in the Arctic, which is
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this has been a free preview of this episode. And the whole thing is open to paid subscribers to Radio Free Mike. So if you'd like to hear the rest, please hit the link in your show notes or in the body of the email we've sent you and upgrade your subscription over at Substack. Then you'll be able to listen to the full episode on any platform. Thanks for listening.